Okay, welcome everyone. Come on in. I think we'll get started. Thank you for taking time on this beautiful day to be inside together rather than at the beach right now. So this session is exploring inner courage and how we deal with that, how we find that, how we move toward that. So what I would like to do is, in a similar pattern to this morning, let's take the first, we have 90 minutes together, take the first half hour. Can you hear me okay? No, you're okay. Take the first half hour to open some themes. We'll take the middle half hour to invite you, if you're comfortable, to see where this lives in you, to an invitational exercise, and then I'll go further with the themes. This is, I wrote a book, which is here, called Finding Inner Courage. And I think it's important to say, I don't know how many authors admit this, but this is sure true for me. When I write, it's because I need to learn about something. It's not because I know anything. So I wrote a book about courage because I needed to learn how to be more courageous. And I needed to try to explore that further. And so the book then is the trail of that investigation. Okay? So one of the things that allowed me a way into this topic where I could figure out, and I knew the whole book was there to be explored, was when I came across the original idiom of the word courage. In the West, it goes back to the Latin cor, C-O-R, which means heart. But the original use, the original use of the word courage meant to stand by one's core. To stand by one's core. That's very powerful and compelling. And that gave me a way to understand what it was I was trying to explore, inner courage. So another way to think about this is we all think of courage, and rightly so, as those kind of unexpected acts in the world. You run into a burning building, same style. All these things that Hemingway refers to as grace under pressure. The interesting thing about anyone who's found themselves in a situation where they have been called to be courageous in that regard, most of the time when you talk to them afterwards, they say, well, I didn't think I was being courageous. I just suddenly found this is what I need to do in the moment. Okay? But in the same way that plants and flowers and trees break surface and grow out of ground, those kind of acts are what breaks surface. Inner courage is the soil out of which those acts grow. So when we talk about inner courage, we're talking more and more about, and they feed each other. Okay? Hi, welcome. They feed each other. So we're talking about acts of being. It takes courage to be open. It takes courage to be honest. It takes courage to listen. It takes courage not to close down. It takes courage to enter something you don't know, to relate to the unknown, to listen to the pain. Okay? So, and no one knows how to do this. You compare notes, see how it works. And I want to start with a wonderful quote, which is an old, short little Zen story, which goes, the troubled apprentice asked his master, why is the road to freedom so long? And the master said, because it has to go through you. Why is the road to freedom so long? Because it has to go through you. And one of the things about all these stories have masters and apprentices. And certainly there are students and there are teachers. But a deeper way to understand all of these fables and stories is that they're speaking about parts that live in us. We carry the master and we carry the apprentice. Often we with the masculine. So inner courage is the courage to return and listen to that voice of your soul. When the days are turbulent and frustrating, interrupted and chaotic, that's inner courage as well. So let's also talk about transformation. The courage to be willing, to be open to being changed. So in this regard, we could talk about what it means to be a pilgrim. You've heard that phrase. Well, I would offer to you, if we journey without being changed, that's being a nomad. If we change without journeying, we could say that's being a chameleon. To journey and to be changed for the journey is to be a pilgrim. Now, of course, you hear that and you all say, well, I want to be the last one. We're all of them. We're all of them. We're human. And there are times that we journey and we don't change. And there are times that we change and we don't journey. So inner courage also is having compassion for one's own humanity. And how do we accept ourselves so we can get to journey and change the journey? You know, we all know the word saint. Well, that comes from the Sanskrit word sant, S-A-N-T, which means truth seeker. Sant, truth seeker. We all are pilgrims and truth seekers. So I want to share with you a creation story. It's from the new book, but this is one of the stories that is an ancient Native American. It's part of the Native American creation story. The story is told by a member of the Ojibwe tribe, and those are native where I'm in Michigan. A member of the Ojibwe tribe that the Great Spirit had trouble keeping the world together. When a little worm said, no. Well, knowing that the secret of life lived in everything, the Great Spirit welcomed the little worm's help. So the Great Spirit said, help me, little worm. And the little worm slowly spun its barely seeable silk, connecting all of creation with one another. The Great Spirit smiled. Its smile cast a light across the earth, making the web of connection briefly visible. The Great Spirit marveled at the little worm's gift. The worm wasn't clever or brilliant, but simply devoted to being and doing what it was prepared to do. To inch through the earth, spinning from its guts, a fine thread that holds everything together. So the Great Spirit said to the little worm, you have saved us, little worm, not by being great or bold, but by staying true to your nature. I will let you live forever. Well, the little worm was stunned and somewhat frightened. The Great Spirit saw this. Don't you want to live forever? The little worm inched closer. Oh, Father, the earth is big enough to cross. I fear so many years if I can't grow. The Great Spirit smiled again at the wisdom of one of its smallest creatures. Very well, little worm. I will only let you grow into forever. I will give you the ability to spin this precious thread of yours that connects everything around yourself. And when you can enclose yourself with that web and quiet your urge to inch and squirm away, you will, after a time, emerge with the thinnest wings full of color. And then you will know the lightness of being light. The little worm bowed and began to search for a leaf on which to grow. And this is how the Great Spirit enabled the worm to spin the first cocoon, and from its quietude emerge as the first butterfly. Ancient, anonymous creation story. What I love about that story is that the worm spins from its guts the fine thread that connects everything. And what does this tell us? It tells us that since the beginning of time, the way that we hold the world together is by spinning the thread from our experience. Yeah, it's hard, but we can't bypass it. We can't do it from up here. It's got to be from here. Otherwise, it doesn't hold everything together. And this takes courage. This takes courage. This may be one of the chief tasks of inner courage, is by facing our experience honestly with an open heart, we keep the world together. We make the connections visible. And being human beings, we have all these gifts. We have this amazing thing called the mind. But as soon as we go up there, if we're up there too long, connections can't find them. We can map them, but we can't feel them. So this is one of the things about inner courage. So, if that makes sense, how do we do this? Well, again, I'm not sure I know, but I will offer some things. One is an amazing truth that's revealed by a great teacher. It's a little fish. Teachers are everywhere. You know, the Hindu have an expression, upa guru, which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. It could be a stone, it could be a cloud, it could be a person or a child who can't speak yet. The teacher that is next to you at this moment. So part of inner courage is being open enough not to miss those teachers. But this is a teacher. A little fish. This is something you all know. We all learn this in, I don't know, grade school or junior high. That fish who breathe air live in water. And we know, how do they breathe air? Because of their gills. Well, you know, we learn this and we take it for granted. This is miraculous. This is a miracle. Think about this. How do they do this? Water, this is why fish have to swim and keep moving. Not that they're going anywhere. I mean, they don't have an appointment calendar. They're not, right, they don't, but they need to keep moving through the water. The water goes through their gills, and the gill extracts the oxygen and discards the rest. And breathe in a place where there's no air. We need to know how to do this. It's miraculous. And I want to suggest to you that as human beings, our heart is our gill. Our heart is our gill. And we, like the fish, we have to keep, I'm not talking about being still or physically moving. We have to move through the days. Not necessarily to get anywhere, but so that experience moves through our heart, and it is our job, which takes courage, to extract what is essential that will keep us alive and discard the rest. This is one of the chief courageous things we can do day to day. What does that mean in your individual lives? I don't know. All we can do is compare notes and talk about what works and what doesn't. So this leads us, if we're moving, and experience is coming through us, and we're trying to extract what is essential. and leave the rest behind. And we don't do it well all the time, because we're human. It's not about doing it perfectly. It's about swimming through the day. So, this leads us to what I would call the wisdom of a broken heart, which is an open heart. So let me share a few things about that. Everybody with me so far? Comfortable? In Tibetan mythology, a spiritual warrior, not a military warrior, a spiritual warrior is one who is committed to a life of transformation. And it is said in Tibetan mythology that a spiritual warrior always has a crack in their heart, because that is how the mysteries get. If it's closed up, the mysteries can't get in. I referred to this morning, in the sense that we always, since the beginning of time, human beings have tried to wall out, close up and wall out difficulty. But when you do that, you wall out all the resources as well. This too takes courage. It takes courage. How do we let in what helps and not let what hurts kill us? In the Jewish tradition, all the traditions speak about this notion differently. In the Jewish tradition, in Deuteronomy, it is said that God puts his words on the heart. And in the Talmud, there's a little exchange by a precocious student who, kind of a little wise ass, and says to his teacher, rabbi, says, well, God's all-knowing. Why doesn't he just put the words in our heart? And his rabbi says, that's not right. Because you wouldn't even appreciate it. You wouldn't even know it. God puts the words on your heart because when life and experience cracks your shell, and what's tender underneath is open, then God's words like honey will just drip into your softest place, and then you will know. So each tradition speaks about this differently. In the Chinese tradition, in a text which is part of 4 texts which are considered the holy texts, ancient texts in China, one is called the Doctrine of the Mean, M-E-A-N, which doesn't mean mean, cruel. It means the doctrine of the middle way. There is one line that says, given sincerity, there will be enlightenment. Given sincerity, there will be enlightenment. I love that. That's like the worm being not brilliant or clever, just true to its own nature. So that led me to explore where does this word sincere come from? And this is amazing what I discovered. In the Western tradition, it goes back to the Renaissance, because in the Renaissance, as all many of you know, there was just this amazing, unpredictable flow of all these very talented geniuses, artists, thinkers, and writers, and especially in the arts. So in the Renaissance, in Italy especially, there were all these sculptors. So there were lots of stone carvers, stone sellers, like hardware stores. There were stone sellers all over Italy. And like any profession, there were honest stone sellers and there were fraudulent stone sellers. So one of the ways that stone sellers would try to pull a fast one on the sculptors was if there was a crack in a piece of marble, they would fill it with wax, and polish it, and sell it as a perfect stone. So in Latin, sincere means without wax. Sincere means without wax. So an honest stone seller didn't hide the flaws in the stone. And it wasn't very long in the generation that a sincere person was someone who didn't hide their flaws, their humanness, was honest about their cracks and how they weren't perfect. see how this accumulates meaning. Because not only does that open, honest relationship, then the practice there so the mysteries continue. So God's words continue. Let me give you two other stories about this. In the Polynesian tradition, in Indonesia, their name, the Native Americans call God the Great Spirit. In one area there, their name for the Great Spirit, or God, or the Creator, is Ta'ora. And their creation story goes something like this. Ta'ora was sitting on a beach, like over here, kind of squat in a tent, and woke up and assumed his full stature and stretched into the shell and broke the shell, and the moon was created. Walked further down the beach, got tired, went to sleep, and the same thing happened. Only this time, when he assumed his full stature and broke the shell, then the sun was created. And this repeats until all of creation happens. Another anonymous, beautiful story, which tells us that's like the God within. Ta'ora is like the God within. And as we go through our lives, isn't this what we do? We learn to wake up and assume our full stature, and then we hit what has been wonderfully a container is now a shell. And when we break it, we contribute to another part of creation. And then we do it all again. So the final story that I want to share with you about the wisdom of a broken and open heart is the story of how a little chick is born. And we see this, it's been forever on Hallmark cards and little cute things. You see a little shell and a little fuzzy little chick. It's adorable. It is. But let's take a minute and talk about it from the chick's perspective. So what happens is the chick is in an enclosed shell with no light. The fluid in there is its food. It eats its food and it grows. So as it grows, it has no room. It's eaten all its food. It gets hungry. It starts to be cramped. It starts to actually begin to suffocate and begin eventually to starve. To the chick, it's like the end of the world as it knows it. And it is forced to assume its full stature and break its shell. And to the chick, it is so hungry, it starts to eat its own shell. It is the end of the world as the chick knows it, and what happens? It's born. It's born. This, again, Upaguru, these teachers, quiet teachers in the open that are everywhere. The worm, the fish, the chick can teach us how to meet the difficulties of living. And spin the silk that connects everything from our dust. To move and swim through the days and extract what is essential and let the rest behind. And how to assume our full stature. And in the same way that we get inoculations, we get a little bit of the disease so that we can be immune. We eat our own shell in order to go beyond. All of this takes an eternity. All of this. So let me read you a poem of mine about my history, short history, it's called The Lesson. When young, it was the first fall from love. It broke me open the way lightning splits it. Then years later, cancer broke me further. This time it broke me wider the way a flood that carves the banks of the narrow stream. And then, having to leave a 20-year marriage, this broke me the way wind shatters glass. And then in Africa, it was the anonymous face of a schoolboy beginning his life. This broke me yet again, but this was like hot water melting soap. Each time I tried to close what had been opened, it was natural enough, but the lesson was, of course, the other way. In never closing again. The great Sufi teacher, Hazrat Inayat Khan, said, God breaks the heart again and again and again until it stays open. Until it stays open. So, before I invite you into a way to personalize this, are there questions? Everybody with me? We're opening a field. I don't have any answer. We're opening a field that we're entering together. An inquiry in this brief time about the nature of inner courage. So, I am going to ask you, like those of you who were there this morning, in a similar fashion for the next half hour, middle part of our time together. But I ask you a question in a minute. Again, if you don't feel ready to explore this question, don't. Write it down and take it with you. You can't, plan when these things happen. We can just invite them. What I'm going to do is invite you to reflect on the question in silence for a minute. See what comes up. Don't go sorting and choosing. Then I'm going to invite you to journal. Let that conversation go to the page for 5-6 minutes. Then I'm going to invite you to pair up and listen to each other, like 5 minutes each. Not counter crosstalk. One person speak about this, the other person listen. I will have it naturally switch. I'll ask you, and then we'll come back together and talk about it. Okay? Pretty clear about the process? Yeah. So the question is this. Begin to tell the story of one crack in your heart and how it's changed you. Begin. This is a huge topic that we can spend all day or weekend. Begin to tell the story of one crack. Doesn't have to be the most significant, but just one crack in your heart, which again, cracks are openings. One crack in your heart, and how it's changed you. If you don't feel ready to explore that, honor yourself and don't do it. No pressure. Everybody clear on what I'm inviting you into? All right, let's just take 30, 40 seconds. Just see what comes up. See what comes up. Okay, when you're ready, just move to the page. And don't worry whether you can write one sentence or 2 pages. It's what you need to write. There's no like, oh, everybody write one. Thanks for joining us. We just invited folks to journal for 10 minutes, though, so just Find a place to pause, take some notes if you need to. This is an easy question. Okay. I would invite you, if you're willing, to pair up. And also, even if this was, whatever your experience was of what you shared, it's difficult to really come up with it. That's not like I could come up with something. Okay? So, yeah, go ahead. One person will talk, the other listen, and I'll give you an indication of when to switch. haven't already switched, find a place to pause and let the other person share. Stop mid-sentence. Start to find a place to pause naturally and bring your attention back to our whole group, please. Hopefully, it's a good, you just demonstrated an example of quiet courage by your willingness to enter that with no notice in the middle of a public place, possibly strangers. So thank you. These kinds of exercises are experiments. There's no desired outcome. There's no, I don't know what's going to happen. It's an experiment at being authentic with each other, which is a courage all by itself, right? So let's spend a few minutes as a group. What, if anything, did you notice from doing this? What did you learn, if anything? Yes.
When you started the session and you used the word courage, I was trying to connect with where you were going to go with it. And this question really made a connection because it evoked a lot of repressed emotions and repressed thoughts. We are so busy with our careers and our lives and our responsibilities that we tend to kind of keep throwing some of the real emotions that we have on back burner. And then when you talk about a crack at the beginning of the story, it just kind of took me down a path that I never thought I'd go. I said to her about it, and I actually started crying this now. Oh my God, I didn't realize I was repressing these feelings for so long. And I don't mind sharing it because to do with the loss of my mother.
Yeah.
And I thought about, well, after she passed away, I thought about how final death is. I never thought about that so seriously. I always used to like for granted.
Yeah.
But then when she passed away, I thought about how final death is and how you can no longer connect to that person anymore. And so when you spoke about the crack and all, I just took it out like that.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, it's interesting. One second, I'll go right to, you know, there are many ways, but two ways that human beings open. One is through these cracks that come from the outside, which is being broken open. And the other is by willfully shedding and opening. Life is a mix of both, right? And so just as things come in from outside that are larger than us, just like you wonderfully demonstrated, as soon as we open up, things come out from in it, which is wonderful. Yes?
Just an observation of a bunch of clinicians for the sake of education, blurring boundaries.
Blurring
Boundaries.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes?
I wanted to,
Could you speak a little? Yeah.
sure, I'll speak up. What I've learned, and I was in your session this morning and also today, was the healing and the suffering question. I didn't write down in terms of the healing and the suffering war now because my crack was over in terms of the death of my mother as well. However, because I'm a Christian and I totally believe that it deals with spirituality, when you ask what did I learn from healing and suffering, it's that everything is in God's will. I mean, when my mother passed that day on her deathbed, I was rejoicing through the hallways of the hospital, and the chaplain wanted to meet with me because he thought something was wrong with me. And what I told him was, she's been praying to be delivered from this pain for about 4 years, and so have I been praying for her to be delivered. So when we're in here and we're talking about this, but I feel like my book is written. I'm at peace with everything that's happening in life because I am a Christian. I believe that everything is written in the book. Yeah. So I don't look for ways to walk life because I feel like it is written for me. And also, we look at the first sin as being, Adam and Eve were enticed, if you're a Christian, to eat from the tree. However, the first sin was when the serpent told Eve, I will give you the same amount of knowledge as God has, and that was the inquisitive sin. It's the first sin is our sin to know everything, to know why everything happens, to want to control life. And what you should do is just life is going to happen and be able to accept it and know that it's in His will.
Thank you for sharing. It's important. Appreciate that. Yes.
Mine may sound a little bit cheesy, but I'm willing to go with it. I honestly feel that Mina and I had kind of a spiritual deal going on. It was like the wormwood situation with the connecting and then the butterfly. And that's the way that I felt during this, and I felt very uplifted.
Oh.
Very excited.
And the little girl you're talking about, she taught me resilience today, how to conquer fears, because that just happened. It's weird that the universe just opened up a lesson on courage for me in the morning, and it's been happening. And then I shared, I just come to a workshop on courage, and I thought that's ridiculously funny sense of humor that the universe had. So, as far as my craft in the heart is concerned, the biggest thing of awareness was telling us, really understanding how powerful the subconscious mind is.
Yeah.
That was consciousness. Because I don't think there's an end theory for it, as far as I'm concerned, at least from the culture that I come from. And I really believe that everybody here is connected to the universe consciousness, like all young. And once you begin to realize how connected you are, there is an invisible web in this room right now. If you're open to learning, you get to
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's important what's that. And as we said this morning, as I said, but and I really believe, we need to hear everyone's views to approach the whole. It's not about one or the other, or this or that, and so I think I appreciate you for sharing their views. Yes.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that we all definitely share in a pulse that's universal. And I think that the question is great. Looking into one thing, saying trying to put it down to one thing, it just makes you realize that you have cracks in your heart, and you tend to cover these things up. You want to forget about it, and that example that you gave with the stonemasons and whatever is absolutely perfect to that. It made me think about, even if you manage to stitch up your heart from some kind of a problem, you may not be able to let things in or out, like you were saying, and possibly that's your unique heart and that's your experiences. So somewhere down the line, something else is going to happen to you to make those tears again, and it might be even worse. But basically, don't fake a fixed heart. If there's anything that you're going to, if you're going to try to cover up anything, don't make it your heart. Great question.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Just a little louder, please.
I like what you just said about quiet courage and being authentic. We were just sharing, and I believe, just like you said, in fact, the universe provides, and we had a very similar life experience that touched both of our lives. And just being able to be open enough to share that, and then we receive.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What I want to also notice here, which you have all demonstrated, notice what would be been committed. Notice how quickly and deeply we can connect to each other and everything that's larger than us if we have the courage to be willing to do that. Now, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And what I mean by being quiet courage is no one would know if you did that or not. Right? No one would have any idea but you. And again, it's not that do we do this now and then 24/7 every minute of the day? No, because we're human, I'm here with you, and I'll fly home tomorrow, and then I'll start taking the garbage out, swear, and then, I'll try to remember what we talk about so that I can refine my own courage. Because this is the journey of being human. It's steerage, I think. You go up, you put a canoe in the center of a river and you leave it by yourself, the current will take it, but eventually it'll drift to one side or the other. And I would offer you that the proper use of will is when the current starts to drift, you just, so the current can take you again. So much of our course during the days is inner spirit. And we actually do ourselves a disservice when we beat ourselves up for falling off course. Because you will fall off course. Because you're human. Well, just the course of, yeah. I mean the course more like the fish is swimming. You know, not going for any particular destination. And it doesn't, this is paradox. It doesn't mean that we don't have plans. You know, I plan to come here and meet with you this weekend and put on my calendar for a long time. That's not, you know, talking about how the course of experience is that we keep moving into experience, keep leaning into it. Yes?
Despite how strong and vulnerable our hearts are, and a friend who has been having an affair, and because he or she was diagnosed with a hole in the heart. And then he did his surgery, and for 6 months, but in a physical hole in the heart, feels much better.
And healed much faster. The whole, wow. Thank you. I have some more things I'd like to offer you in our last time, but are there any other questions before I move on? All right. So let's, you know, this morning I spoke about, and bears repeating here, the image of the flute. And how no two flutes, and this is before instrument companies made standardized flutes, flutes were made from bone and wood. And no two flutes were the same, because no two flutes had the same holes carved in them. And the teacher here is that every soul on earth is such a flute. And experience carves holes in us. So that the breath of spirit, whatever meaning you have for that, or the breath of everything larger than you, goes by the holes and makes such your song out. And no two souls have the same song. So another way to talk about what comes out is what we can call indwelling presence. If we meet our experience, our indwelling presence comes out. Now, I would offer you there are many ways to approach this, but let me offer you 3 arts, if you will. And one is the art of putting things together. The art of putting things together. You know, we live in a world that there's a lot of benefit from specialization, but we live in a world that is overbalanced in the advance of technology and science, which breaks things apart. That's not a bad thing, but it's out of balance and takes over the need to put things together. You know that if you take 2 living heart cells and put them in a petri dish and go to lunch and come back, they will have found a third in common beat. And they will start eating that third in common beat. We all know this too. Worms that cut in half will grow into 2 worms. There is an equal and strong, compelling force in nature and life that is constantly joining things. So let me share with you, this is from Basho, who was the great poet. Can you hear Basho? Basho, the great poet in the 1600s in Japan, who really made haiku a legitimate form. And Basho had a student, Kikaku, right? His great name, Basho Kikaku, who became a wonderful poet in his own right. But he brought his master home and his master said to him, "You must reverse your haiku. You mustn't abuse God's creatures. Not dragonfly, remove its wings, pepper tree, but pepper tree and wings, dragon. The whole world depends on how you start and hold. You mustn't abuse God's creatures. You must reverse your haiku. Not dragonfly, remove its wings, pepper tree. The pepper tree and wings, dragon. The whole world depends on how you start and hold." So I just offer you to think about where in your life does the art of putting things together need more attention. That is a place where we can exercise in the courage. The second is the art of facing things. I think there is a certain amount of pain, friction in the world just by the fact of living. But I think that we double the pain in the world when we don't face what is ours to face. The need doesn't go away, and we wound up laying it out on others. So we can reduce suffering for ourselves and the world by working on the courage to face what is ours to face. It's a very, very tender example of this I learned. I have a friend who, her calling is she works with orphans of war. Goes around the world, and the little ones that are left after conflict she takes care of. And she was in Guatemala, and there was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, whose parents and brothers had died, been killed. And she stayed with her and other orphans, and she found her one day in a field, sitting on a rock, and she was tearing the wings off a butterfly, saying, "Oversee, poor little one, oversee." Now, no one can blame that little girl. She had experienced heartache that her little heart couldn't even carry. But she was a little messenger of what we're talking about. Because, of course, the little butterfly was her. Her wings had been taken off. And she, in her pain, needed to replay that. If we don't face what is ours to face, we will find smaller things to take the wings off. We can increase compassion and kindness in the world by simply facing what is ours to face. This is the second art. And the third is close to this, but it's worth mentioning by itself, and that is the art of feeling what is ours to feel. You can face something, but if you get that far and you don't feel it, then it defeats the point. So it's worth mentioning that by itself. So the art of putting things together, the art of facing what is ours to face, and the art of feeling what it is we feel. The art of feeling what it is that's ours to feel. If you can face something, you still not feel it. So we don't have time here, but I want to give you 2 other questions that you can take with you, that you can either journal on or talk about with others, whatever you want to do with them. So one out of these 3 arts is, can you tell the story of someone in your life who taught you about what these are? Who taught you either by example or by actually teaching you, who taught you about the art of putting things together, or taught you about the art of facing, or taught you about feeling what is yours to feel. And if that person is still alive, I would encourage you, thank them. discover this story to tell someone else about it and ask them about this. Because this kind of storytelling is like the worm. It starts to hold things together. The second question I would offer you to take home with you, underneath or in the center of our indwelling presence is our inborn gift or gifts. I believe we are all born with inborn gifts. And part of our journey is to discover them and to befriend them. To befriend them, to be in conversation with them. So this question is, can you describe one gift you were born with that no one gave you and no one can take away? One gift that you were born with that no one gave you and no one can take away. And how can you be a better friend to your gift? How can you be a better friend to your gift? I also think, as someone we talked earlier before we started, these are wonderful questions for children too. Actually, children won't think these questions strange, while as adults we initially do. Do any of you repeat those questions? No. The last one. Describe one gift that you were born with that no one gave you, no one can take away. And how can you be a better friend to your gift? I have one more set of things I'd like to share. Pause. Any questions or anything you'd like to ask about? Yeah.
I attended your morning session and I came on purpose to this one because I think you are very philosophical in your approach. Thompson is the philosophical approach that helps in actual treatment of drug addicts.
Well, I don't get that.
Because where we start with them, it's really we're trying to get them to engage in the challenge. So till you have built enough or rapport with them, it takes a while. And I really like your philosophy that the way you approach it. I'm just wondering if you can discuss just a little bit about how you can use the philosophy to bring it to the treatment process.
Well, I think that, first off, I don't have any statistical information about any of that. But what I think is that anyone who is in trouble, whether it's being an addict or facing a life-threatening situation or in trauma or their marriage is falling apart because someone is cheated on, whatever, the life has opened them. How they meet that opening, again, we constrict, we dilate our eyes how many times a day we do that. So I feel, so let's pause there, because while I appreciate, thank you for what you're saying, but I don't see all of this as abstract. Philosophy is only abstract when it's not, when you're in it, this helps. When you're watching, it becomes abstract. It's like the old story about the, it's the old story about the pig and the chicken who go by the diner and they're making an eggs are for sale. Yeah, and the chicken said, oh, I'm so glad that I can make a contribution. And the pig goes, yeah, for you it's a contribution. Yeah. So, when we watch, like, things get abstract and it's philosophical and it's esoteric. But when you're in it, our understanding, that's why I say things like, how do you befriend your kid, not understand your kid. So I would just say that I know from my own life and from other people that I have been around, both professionally and personally, it's like casting seeds. You throw out a whole bunch of seeds and you just don't know which one's going to get through when the person's open versus constricted. And if one gets through it, maybe change like that. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's, yeah. Anyone else? Well, let me offer you, okay, so let me offer you just a handful of ways then, from what we've talked about, to practice and personalize inner courage. Okay? One is, mentioned in the beginning, by standing by one's core. Standing by one's core. And the practice here, and that comes from the original idiom of the word courage. To stand by one's core. And that comes from the practice to live from the center out. A second way of practicing personalizing inner courage is the journey and courage of deep listening. And how do we actually listen? Well, I don't mean physically, but inwardly we listen by we continue to empty and begin again. Empty and begin again. There's a great little story of two scientists who traveled to India to meet with a sage, a master, because they want his take, his take on their theories. And they get there and they sit down and the master starts to pour tea for them. And he just keeps pouring and the tea cup overflows and it's spilling all over the table. And they go, oh, excuse me, the cup is full. And he goes, yes, as your minds are full. When you can empty your minds, come back and we'll talk. So courage to keep emptying and beginning again. We can practice inner courage by the effort to make sense of our experience. That is, to trust the sanctity and wisdom inherent in experience. The gill of our heart, which I mentioned. The practice to extract what is essential and let the rest go. We can practice inner courage through the wisdom of a broken/open heart, which is the courage to stay open despite our pain, so the mysteries can get in. We can practice courage through the three arts I just mentioned. The art of putting things together, the art of facing what is ours to face, and feeling what is ours to feel. And finally, we can practice inner courage by meeting our experience completely enough that the openings that are carved in us will let the song of our soul come out. How do you personalize those things? I can't tell you. Yeah. By meeting experience completely enough that it will let the song of our soul out. How do we personalize these things in our lives? I can't tell you. I'm only trying to figure it out myself. And this is why we need each other. This is why the conversation needs to continue. So in a way, we're all living experiments. So, if you want to ask me one more time, if there's any questions or thoughts or feelings you want to share before I close. I offer you a poem of mine as a way to close, called Free Fall. Free Fall. If you have 1 hour of air and many hours to go, you must breathe slowly. If you have 1 arm's length and many things to care for, you must give freely. If you have 1 chance to know God and many doubts, you must set your heart on fire. We are blessed. Each day is a chance. We have 2 arms. Fear wastes